Picture this. You're standing on a cracked sidewalk, rent notice in hand, watching your neighbor's moving truck pull away. Again. Third one this month. The air smells like cut grass and quiet panic. You do the math in your head for the 100th time. Paycheck in, rent out, nothing left. I used to live that exact scene. Then I found something real estate agents don't put in listings. Towns that look like they were airlifted straight from Santorini, where rent hasn't cracked $1,000. Nobody's supposed to know about these places yet. That's exactly why we're starting here. But it doesn't have to be this way. While half the country is trapped in a bidding war for a shoebox, a handful of American towns are quietly living a different story. Whitewashed buildings, blue shutters, cliffside views, and rent checks so small they feel like a typo. Nobody markets these places because the second they go viral, the prices follow. You're seeing this before that happens. Stick with me, because entry number 8 alone will make you question everything you thought you knew about affordable. Quick thing before we dive in. If you're the kind of person who's tired of scrolling past $2,500 starter homes and wants the real list, hit subscribe now. Not for me, for you, because I'm about to name 8 actual cities, not vague regions, not somewhere in the Midwest. Real names, real rent numbers, real Zillow listings you can pull up tonight. Most people watching this will screenshot one city and forget the rest. Don't be most people. Number 8 is about to ruin your idea of what affordable coastal living even means.
Number 8. Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Number 8 doesn't look like it belongs on a cheap towns list at all. Cape Girardeau, Missouri sits stacked against the Mississippi River, and if you squint at the whitewashed old town buildings climbing the bluff, you'd swear you were looking at a postcard from Naxos. Same terracotta rooftops, same narrow, winding streets, same golden late afternoon light bouncing off limestone walls. Here's what nobody's saying out loud. Median rent sits around $780 a month for a one-bedroom, according to Zillow's regional data this year. A two-bedroom with river views runs under $1,000. Compare that to the $2,100 national average for a comparable unit, and you start to understand why people who found this town go quiet about it online. They don't want it flooding with buyers. Utilities average $140 a month, and groceries sit roughly 12% below the national index. A local put it best: the only expensive thing here is admitting you live somewhere with a funny name. Before the comments fill up with, but is it safe? Is there work? Yes, full regional hospital, fiber internet fast enough for remote jobs, a small airport an hour out. This isn't off-grid survivalism. It's a functioning town that just happens to look like a vacation. Picture waking up, walking 2 blocks to a bluff-top cafe, coffee in hand, watching barges drift slow down the Mississippi, while the light hits those whitewashed buildings exactly like it hits the Cyclades in every postcard you've seen. Except your rent this month was $780. You stop checking rent hike notices and start checking the barge schedule instead. That's genuinely the most stressful part of your week now. That's the emotional flip nobody markets. You're not managing a housing crisis. You're just living somewhere that photographs like one you'd need a passport for. Comment Team Cape G or Hard Pass. I want to know who's actually packing bags, because number 7 isn't a river town. It's an entire coastline you've probably never heard of, and the rent gets even stranger.
Number 7. Astoria, Oregon. Number 7 flips the whole Greek islands idea sideways, because this one isn't whitewashed cliffs, it's misty hillside houses stacked above a harbor. The kind of view that looks lifted straight from Hydra or Simi if Hydra had pine trees and a Pacific fog rolling through every morning. Astoria, Oregon sits where the Columbia River meets the ocean, and the colorful Victorian houses climbing the hillside give it that same layered cliffside village feel, just with salt air instead of ouzo. Here's the number that stops people mid-scroll. Median rent for a one-bedroom sits around $950 per current regional listing data. Still under the $1,000 mark, still less than half the national average for a coastal property with a harbor view. Groceries run close to national average here. This isn't a town without trade-offs, and I'm not going to pretend it is. Fiber internet is standard. There's a hospital in town, and the fishing village economy means there's actual local work, not just remote-only survival. A local joked, "We don't have seasons here, we have shades of gray," and honestly, that's the flaw. Rain, a lot of it, most of the year. Picture this. Fog rolling off the river at 7 a.m., sea lions barking somewhere down at the docks, and you're paying less for a harbor view apartment than most people pay for a windowless studio in Denver. Comment Team Astoria or hard pass, because number 6 is where this list stops being charming and starts getting genuinely strange.
Number 6, Fairhope, Alabama. Number 6 is where the Greek islands comparison stops feeling like a stretch. Fairhope, Alabama sits on a bluff overlooking Mobile Bay, and the town center is genuinely built like a Mediterranean village on purpose. Pink and white stucco buildings, wrought iron balconies, bougainvillea spilling over garden walls, pier lights reflecting across still water at sunset. People who've been to Mykonos say it unprompted without being asked. Median rent for a one-bedroom sits around $920 based on current regional listings, again under that $1,000 line. A local pier walk at golden hour costs nothing and looks like it should cost a plane ticket. Cost of living overall runs about 6% below the national average, groceries included. Here's the twist nobody mentions in the glossy best small towns lists. Hurricane season is real here, and homeowners insurance has climbed sharply the last few years along the Gulf Coast. That's the honest flaw. The same water that makes the view is the same water that occasionally makes insurance adjusters nervous. Renters, though, don't carry that risk. That's the leverage most people miss. Picture this. Humid evening air, cicadas going off like static, string lights over an outdoor cafe table, and your rent is still under $1,000 a month. A local put it simply, it's beautiful until August, and then it's beautiful and sweaty. Comment Team Fairhope or hard pass, because number 5 is where the math gets almost aggressive.
Number 5, Newport, Kentucky. Number 5 is the one that makes people stop and rewatch the intro, because Newport, Kentucky sits directly across the river from downtown Cincinnati. Full skyline view, riverfront promenade, cobblestone streets in the historic district that genuinely resemble a small Adriatic port town, minus the ferry terminal. Here's the number that should not be possible this close to a major metro. Median rent for a one-bedroom sits around $880. A skyline view, walking distance to restaurants, and a full city's job market for under $900 a month, while Cincinnati proper averages closer to $1,400 for the same square footage. That gap is the whole opportunity. You get metro-level jobs, healthcare, and infrastructure with small-town rent because the address says Kentucky instead of Ohio, and most renters never bother checking the other side of the river. This is the mainstream media blind spot nobody's covering. River-adjacent rent arbitrage. Cross a bridge, save $500 a month, keep the exact same commute. Picture this, string lights over the riverfront boardwalk, the Cincinnati skyline lit up gold across the water, and you're paying rent that would barely cover a parking spot downtown. The honest flaw? Property taxes here have been climbing as the secret gets out, and rents are already up 9% year over year. This window is closing. A local said it flat. Everybody's finding out at the same time now. Comment Team Newport or hard pass, because number 4 is where this stops being a lifestyle upgrade and starts being a financial loophole. Number 4, Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Number 4 is the strangest one on this list and also the cheapest. Eureka Springs, Arkansas is built directly into the Ozark hillside. No flat streets, no grid, just switchback roads and Victorian buildings stacked on top of each other. The whole town terraced like a cliffside village carved into rock. People who've traveled to the Greek islands specifically say the terracing feels identical. Just swap limestone for Ozark stone. Median rent for one bedroom sits around $700, the lowest number on this list so far. A two-bedroom with a hillside view can run under $900. Groceries and utilities combined sit roughly 15% below the national average. This is a town where a barista's income can actually cover rent without 3 roommates. Here's the insider knowledge most people miss. This isn't a dying town propped up by nostalgia. It's a functioning arts and tourism economy, meaning there's real local income, not just remote worker dependency. That matters because towns with only remote worker economies collapse the moment a recession hits. Eureka Springs has tourism dollars flowing in year-round. The honest flaw, the hills mean no real public transit. At winters can strand you if you don't own a decent vehicle. A local admitted, you learn to love a good pair of boots or you don't survive January here. Picture this, fog settling into the valley below your porch at dawn, church bells echoing off stone buildings stacked into the hillside, rent so low it barely registers as a monthly stressor anymore.
Comment Team Eureka or hard pass because number 3 is where the numbers stop making sense entirely. Number 3. Port Angeles, Washington. Number 3 is the one that breaks people's mental model of the Pacific Northwest is expensive. Port Angeles sits on the Olympic Peninsula, waterfront, mountains rising directly behind the town, ferries crossing the strait toward Canada, the kind of layered coastline and cliff geography people compare to the less touristy Greek islands, the ones without the crowds, just water, rock, and whitewashed light. Median rent for a one-bedroom sits around $850, according to current regional listings. This close to a national park, this close to a ferry route to another country, for less than most people pay for a studio in a landlocked city. A local told me, people pay thousands to vacation here for a week. We pay $850 a month to live here. Here's the insider detail nobody's flagging. This town survives almost entirely on tourism, fishing, and a modest but real remote work influx, meaning it's not propped up by one fragile industry. That's the difference between a town that's cheap because it's dying and a town that's cheap because it's simply undiscovered. The honest flaw: rain, constant gray skies for months, and a ferry-dependent commute if you need Seattle for anything specific. It's isolated. Some people find that peaceful, some find it suffocating by February. Picture this: fog lifting off the strait at sunrise, mountains cutting straight up behind the harbor, a ferry horn in the distance, and your rent this month didn't even hit $900. Comment Team Port Angeles or hard pass, because number 2 isn't just cheap, it's the town landlords in 3 surrounding states don't want you finding. Number 2. Cairo, Illinois. Number 2 is the one landlords 3 states over genuinely don't want circulating, because Cairo, Illinois sits at the exact meeting point of the Mississippi and Ohio rivers. Dramatic bluffs, water on 2 sides, crumbling but beautiful old architecture that looks less like the Midwest and more like an abandoned Aegean port town waiting to be rediscovered. Median rent for a one-bedroom sits around $520. Read that again. Not a scam listing, not a if you're lucky number, the actual current median. A full house can rent for under $700 in some cases. This is the number that makes people screenshot the video and stop watching. Here's the twist nobody sugarcoats. Cairo's population has declined sharply over decades. Infrastructure is genuinely aging, and job opportunities locally are limited. This is not a town for someone who needs walkable nightlife or a booming job market. This is a town for remote workers, retirees, or anyone willing to trade convenience for radical affordability. That trade-off is real, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. But for the right person, someone working remote, someone tired of paying $1,800 to live paycheck to paycheck, this is a legitimate loophole most relocation channels won't touch because it doesn't photograph as aspirational content. Picture this: 2 rivers meeting under a wide Midwestern sky, old brick buildings catching the last light, and a rent number so low it barely shows up as a line item anymore. Comment Team Cairo or hard pass, because number 1 isn't just cheap rent, it's the town nobody in real estate wants you knowing about yet.
Number 1, Ludington, Michigan. Number 1, and this is the town that started this entire video. Ludington, Michigan sits on the shore of Lake Michigan, and if you've never seen it, picture turquoise water lapping against white sand, a historic lighthouse standing at the harbor mouth, pastel-colored downtown buildings catching the evening white. People who've traveled to Mykonos and Santorini post photos of this town and get comments asking, "Wait, is this Greece?" It is not. It's the Midwest. Median rent for a one-bedroom sits around $890, current regional data. A lakefront-adjacent 2-bedroom can be found under $1,150. Compare that to actual Great Lakes tourist towns 20 minutes away charging double, and you start to see why this specific town stayed under the radar. It's surrounded by more famous lake towns that absorb all the attention and all the price inflation, while Ludington quietly stays livable. Full hospital, real local economy through tourism and a working car ferry port to Wisconsin, fiber internet, actual year-round residents, not a ghost town propped up by Airbnb. The honest flaw: brutal lake effect winters and summer tourist season makes traffic and prices spike for about 10 weeks a year. That's the trade-off for turquoise water in July.
Picture this, standing on that lighthouse pier at sunset, water so clear it looks Mediterranean, and your entire monthly housing cost is less than what most Americans spend on rent and one car payment combined. The math didn't change, the perception did. Comment Team Ludington for hard pass, because what I'm about to tell you next is the part almost nobody in real estate content will say out loud. Here's the part nobody says out loud. Every town on this list shares one trait, a second lake, river, or coastline location, not the famous shoreline, the one right next to it. Real estate follows fame, not beauty, so the actual loophole isn't a city name, it's a search habit. Find the town 20 minutes from the famous expensive one. Same views, same water, half the rent because the algorithm and the buyers haven't caught up yet. That gap won't stay open forever.